The last day in federal prison is a surreal day, right? Like you've reached the final day. You've endured everything. You've made it to the end of your sentence. You're getting ready to go home. Unfortunately, it takes about 5 hours to realize you're simply going from one institution, federal prison, to another one, the halfway house, if indeed you are going to the halfway house. And many of you will, because people are eligible to get more halfway house time than ever if they are prepared for it, if they earn it. And I want to help you earn it. And if you go there, I don't want you to regret that time in the halfway house, as so many good dudes do. So this video is going to touch on my first 7 days in the halfway house. I'll share some insights from every day. Now, when it was like 4:30 in the morning, sitting in my cubicle thinking, I can't believe this is over, I was kind of delusional as well, because I presumed foolishly that I was optimistic, at least. I presumed that all of the work I did in federal prison would immediately pay off. Right? I wrote this book, I got my release plan, I'm ready to rock and roll, man. I wrote to my PO, I got a job. It's all. Unfortunately, it might not always go as planned, and some stakeholders may take the work that you give and create and throw it in the trash. But don't give up hope. We got to build, we got to create, we got to overcome. Now, I was picked up from federal prison at 7:30 in the morning, and I had until 12 p.m. to report to the halfway house in Hollywood. Now, I will tell you, it is not a release. It is like a furlough, and it is really quasi freedom. And as we were making that drive from Taft to Los Angeles, I was happy to be released from prison, but you have this anxiety about what's next. You get really comfortable in federal prison. You understand your environment. You got the job, you got the bunk, you got your routine, you got the exercise, your visitation. You got to dial down. And then you have to move to a new environment where people have been for quite some time. And I knew going to the halfway house, it would be a fundamentally different environment. It looked like a hotel. You're in with federal and state prisoners, male and female, all sorts of crime, violence, sex, drug, white-collar dudes like me. So I knew it would be a different experience. So my initial goal, of course, was to get the hell out of there as quickly as I could. I went to a quick breakfast with my family, but frankly, I was anxious to get to the halfway house, because if they tell you if you get there late, it's like an escape, man. They put the marshals out for you. So I was due to be there at noon, and like federal prison, I got there early. I was there at about 11:30. I walked in with a box that I'd had from federal prison that had some books, including my book, Lessons from Prison, my release plan, and also this journal that hangs in my office. I walked in, there was a case manager there, and she said, "What?" I said, "Oh, hi, my name is Justin Perperny. I was just released from Taft Federal Prison Camp. I was told to report here by noon." You notice I made some progress over 388 days. Remember my first day in jail? I reached out to shake hands with a person. I kept the hands close. No snake in the hand. She said, "Sit down, we'll get to you soon." No problem. So I sat there for 2 hours. Just watching her work. I was fine, man. You're just sitting there waiting with your box. You see a lot of dudes coming in and out. They're getting their job approved, their itinerary approved. They're yelling at people, "Why aren't you doing your job? Get to program." And you watch too much TV. You're lazy. You're exercising too much. What the hell are you people doing? Clean up. So it's a very small environment. It's like a rundown motel in Hollywood with probably 40 rooms, a small office where all the staff is piled in, and there's an outdoor area where all of the prisoners, like me, kind of hang around and talk. But many of them are coming in. So I sat there for 2 hours, and I did what many of you should do when you go to a new institution. You just sit there and listen. And I listened to a lot of things that first 2 hours before I met with the case manager. Namely, I'd like to get out of here as quickly as I can, much like federal prison. Now, I presume that the work that I'd put in federal prison would immediately impress my case manager. So when I met with her 2 hours later, and she said, "How long was my sentence?" I said my sentence was 18 months. I received 3 months in the halfway house, and I didn't say anything else. I didn't push further. I didn't ask for anything. What's the upside? She sees a lot of people like me. I hadn't been there long enough to ask for anything. She did ask, did I bring anything? And I said, I sure did. I said, I brought my books, including a manuscript that I wrote. In retrospect, I shouldn't have said that I wrote a book or even offered it to her, which I did not, but I was going to. I did say I documented my journey through prison through a release plan. Here is a copy. This is awesome. So she took it. She's like, and she had everything was Boston Red Sox. Hat, shirt, sweatshirt, socks, shoes, necklace, earrings. She was a big Boston Red Sox fan. She went and I thought she'd be totally impressed. You wrote this? Yeah, every day I wrote it. You believe I wrote a blog every day in prison? Crap. People said I couldn't do it. I did. I wrote a blog every day in jail. It's awesome. Every day I wrote a blog. Sent it home to my mom. She put it on my website, justinmcperney.com, documented the journey, and didn't say any of that, of course. That's what I was thinking of saying, but I didn't. So she's like, yeah, great. I didn't need this, and I didn't ask for it. So right off the bat, I'm like, all right, my release plan is getting thrown in the toilet, which I know some of you think is going to happen. And guess what? It could happen to you, but don't fret. Don't get upset. It's going to pay dividends down the road, as I described in day 3. So after meeting with her for about 30 minutes, she said, you're going to go upstairs. I'm like, cool. And then I went upstairs, and there was 20 dudes in one room. So there's like all these empty rooms downstairs. Like that would be like Beverly Hills, right? Pacific Palisades. She elected to move me all the way upstairs and said, you're going to be in this room, 20 dudes, 1 toilet. And here's the takeaway from that first day in federal prison, that all of you may feel that first day in federal prison. If you feel it, it's okay. You're not alone. You're all going to wish you were back in prison. You're all going to wish you were standing for count in federal prison inside of that cushy minimum security camp after you get to the count. I shouldn't say all of you. I know I did, in part because I had such a productive routine while in prison. So if you feel that first day in federal prison, you wish you were back, it's okay. I will get better. Now, the next day after sleeping in that room with 20 dudes was a tough day because I didn't sleep well. Certainly I slept better in federal prison because back then you weren't even allowed to have iPhones in that halfway house, but of course everyone did. So all night guys are up, like 20 guys in there, 18 of them had the phone talking to their girl, they're texting, they're yelling, they're hollering. I'm like, oh, I wish I was back in prison. So I didn't sleep well the next day, but day 2 they put you on lockdown. So you can expect within those early days, first few days, to be on, I guess, lockdown, where you're not getting passes, you're not leaving, you're not going anywhere. You're going to go to like an orientation where a case manager is going to tell you what's expected of you, how you're going to qualify for passes, programming that some of you might be required to participate in, like if you did the drug program. I did not. So it's kind of like logistics and formality, similar to when you go to federal prison, you go through admissions and orientation, right? You have to go through some programming. The programming, however, was, how do I like to say, it wasn't that impressive. So you go into this little room, and it was later in the afternoon where we had been sitting around for a while, and guys were immediately upset because it was like the NBA playoffs, I think, and they wanted to watch the playoffs, but the case manager came in and turned off the TV and said, okay, we are ready to program for all you new people. Number 1 class, we're going to talk about how to balance a checkbook. And someone in the back of the room was like, this is a joke, right? And she's like, no, it's not a joke. Are you mocking me? Do you want to go back to federal prison? Do you know how to balance a checkbook? Many of you people owe fines and restitution and money. You can bet your rat's ass we're going to get it. I'm like, oh, you should probably stay quiet in the back row. I just sat there thinking, I'm glad I know how to balance a checkbook, and I'm glad I'm day 2 in the halfway house, 88 days left. And this is a good message for all of you who make it 9 or 12 months in the halfway house. You better be prepared for those early days and weeks to get your job approved. If not, indeed, you will be wishing you were back in the halfway house if they don't approve your job. A lot of guys felt that way. I heard that a lot. So it went from balancing a checkbook. Then we watched this movie, and I'm filming this video knowing the creator, Morgan Spurlock, I think was his name, of Super Size Me, unfortunately died of cancer a couple of days ago. What we were required to do day 2 in the halfway house after the class of how to balance a checkbook, we watched Super Size Me. Why, I don't know. Perhaps the value of living a balanced lifestyle. I know while we watched it, the person who worked in the halfway house or whatever, she was sleeping in the back row, and then she'd wake up and go outside and smoke a cigarette. For those of you that do like to smoke, you were able to smoke inside and outside of, or I should say outside of the halfway house. So we watched Super Size Me, and then because we attended the checkbook class and we watched Super Size Me, she said, I'm going to forego all programming for the rest of the day. Get out. From there, I immediately realized I didn't want to spend time like in the compound, the outdoor area where a lot of problems were happening. I saw drugs already beginning to get smuggled in and out. It was an interesting time because there was a porn star, you might remember her name, Janine, who was made famous in a Blink-182 video. She had served 6 months for tax evasion. A lot of tattoos, a lot of interest. I think TMZ was outside trying to film her, and many prisoners, not including me, were enamored by her and wanted to spend time with her. She ended up marrying some dude she met in the halfway house. I hope they're still happy and healthy. So I didn't think it would be a good idea for me to be outside in that environment. From there, I rolled inside to that room where there was 20 dudes in there, but during the day, nobody was there. And that's what I did from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock until I went to bed, and I struggled to sleep again that next day, but I didn't complain. I was happy to be home. That was day 2. Lockdown, a little bit of programming, avoiding the compound and the problems that would follow. Day 3, I got a break because my case manager said she was moving me to one of the desired spots downstairs. I had no idea why. I didn't ask why. I quickly moved into a new spot with 3 other bunks, including someone who had been in prison for 35 years for robbing banks. In fact, day 4 that I was there, he went out and he never came back, leaving me alone in that room for a little while until someone else would come in for a couple of days and this and that. Day 3 in the halfway house was a phenomenal day. It was a great day in my life, and it helped prove and verify all of the work that I had done. It's a great message for you. There are going to be dudes in jail potentially who tell you your work is useless, nobody will care, nobody will read it, they're going to throw it in the trash, kind of like my case manager, the Boston Red Sox fan, did day 1. You should do the work regardless. You should build, you should create, you should document it, you should share it with all stakeholders, regardless of what people tell you. Because on day 3, I met with my probation officer, Isaiah Murrow. And Mr. Murrow, if you're watching this, thank you. You were fair and honest, and you gave me opportunities that I took advantage of, and I'm very grateful. I met Mr. Murrow on my 3rd day and said, I'm going to be overseeing you for 3 years, and I'm well aware of your plans because, of course, I had shared my release plan and other work with him from federal prison. What are your plans? I said, well, I worked incredibly hard in prison. I avoided problems, and I'm looking for opportunities to move into a totally new career. Because of my bad choices, I forfeited my right to sell socks and real estate. And I've worked every day to build that career in federal prison through my release plan, through my manuscript. And I understand from what I've read, correct me if I'm wrong, that I might not be able to pursue that career of working with felons or justice impacted people until I'm free. And I understand you need to approve that career. He said, that is correct. I have to approve everything that you are going to do on supervised release, especially because you owe restitution. And my primary focus is making sure your victims get their money back. Understood. I considered and contemplated that every single day that I was in prison, Mr. Murrow. I understand that I can't do that work until I'm free. Then he cut me off and he said, do not do any of that work in the halfway house or bill for it. Understood. I didn't. I began to speak with and advise some people because they were finding me through my website, but I never took a penny till I was free. I also understand I need to find employment while I'm in the halfway house. I have secured a letter, an employment offer that I'd like to share with you. He said, give me the letter. Now I gave this letter. I gave my release plan to my case manager. She threw it away day 1. My probation officer was vested and he read it. It was a letter from my good friend Sam Pompeo at Sotheby's International Real Estate in Calabasas, offering me an opportunity to do some blogging, essentially to work as a receptionist for 12 to 14 hours a day at minimum wage. He would be overseeing me, and it was a 40-hour-a-week job, and it would take about 30 or 45 minutes to get to Calabasas. He said, thank you for the letter, which of course was on letterhead, clearly stated my responsibilities and obligations. He said, I will be in touch with Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Ewing, who was also the broker of the firm, and let you know. That was day 3. 3 hours later on day 3 after that meeting, he said, your job is approved. It changed absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. He said, now you can't start until next week because I need to go visit the job and confirm everything is status quo and we need to get the paperwork signed. I said, I totally understand. That was like the greatest day of my whole entire journey. Because so many of you watching this video, of course you want to get out early, but if you do, you go to the halfway house and your job doesn't get approved. You can't be an entrepreneur. You can't work for yourself. They want you to work, as I like to say, for KFC. That's why so many dudes were going to the halfway house every day in the halfway house, day 1, 2, 3, until I left. I want to go back to prison. This place sucks. This is miserable. They care about everything. They pay more attention to disciplinary infractions. They put us on lockdown. This is ridiculous. I want to go back. No, I don't want to get 30 employment applications today. Terrible. I was so grateful that I had done that work every single day in prison and built a record. I didn't tell them what I wanted to do for work. I showed them why I was worthy of it. That's exactly what you need to do, presuming you don't want to be locked down in that halfway house, miserable, wishing you were back in prison. So I knew I wasn't going to start my job really till like day 7 or day 8, which meant I had several more days in that halfway house, 24 hours a day. Day 4 wasn't that eventful other than to say I got permission to drive and the car immediately got towed. I'd only been in prison for a year when I forgot how to drive. Apparently I was parked in the red, like, hold on. It wasn't that much, but apparently it was a $500 parking ticket. I had to call my father, like it was a 9-year-old boy. Dad, please come and get me. The car has been towed. Initially, I thought it was stolen. I had permission from the halfway house to go get the car. To go get the car. We did. My dad was very sympathetic, and he said, "Son, this has really been quite an experience." I said, "Dad, you have no kidding." That was day 4. Now, as we approached day 5, we dealt with, unfortunately, like lockdowns, right? Someone had gotten into trouble. Someone had brought in some drugs. Someone failed a breathalyzer test. So nobody was able to visit. Nobody was able to leave the community. Like total lockdown, where we were in like our room. Now, for me, that was sort of fine because I spent all of my time there anyway, but it made the guys really, really frustrated that they couldn't leave. Now, people who were working were allowed to leave, but people who were not working had to stay, and it made things really frustrating for them. Now, as we approach day 6, which was a phenomenal day because I got my first almost 6-hour pass. And as many of you know, I've documented what I did right after I got out of federal prison. I cold walked into law offices in downtown. I did the same thing with my first 6-hour pass from the halfway house on day 6. Let me make sure. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yes, day 6. On that Monday, I had a 6-hour pass, and I went to downtown Los Angeles, and I took copies of my book, Lessons from Prison, and I spent time cold walking into law offices. And I can't tell you I really enjoyed getting thrown out of law offices. I was very happy that I was following through on the plans that I had made while in prison and trying to build this career to help justice-impacted people. And my friends of mine were kind of like, dude, you need to relax a little bit. Like, why don't you use your past to, like, have you met a girl? You want to go have some fun? Or you want to go see a movie? I'm like, I don't have time for sex. I don't have time for a movie. And I don't give a rat's ass about In-N-Out Burger. I have $500,000 in restitution. I want to build a career. I want to help people. I want to sustain myself. And I don't want to encumber my parents' retirement. So I'm going to go work. I love you. Thank you. I'm going to do my own thing. I know you're trying to help me. I know you want to support me. I have got to build something. I was so anxious to hit the streets despite the negative feedback that I got. Of course, I got some positive feedback as well. Now, the 6-hour pass, really, I only spent about 3.5 hours of it because with traffic, I'm concerned that I'm going to get back late. They're checking in with you every couple of hours. And frankly, I was so excited to get to day 7, which is how I'll wrap up this video on my first week in the halfway house, and I'll close with some insights. Day 7 changed everything for me because my job was approved, or it had started. And that job enabled me to be out of the halfway house like 14 to 16 hours a day. And here's what that looked like. I would start very early still, like at 4:30 in the morning. I would continue to build my release plan, continue to write book reports because I was also planning to speak to corporations and universities on motivations and consequences of white-collar crime. In fact, I think I wrote a book report in the halfway house I can link to here called Why Good People Do Bad Things by Debbie Ford. So I'd get up like at 4 o'clock in the morning like prison, read, write, do whatever. I'd leave there at 6 o'clock. Because I'm kind of a germ phobe, I wouldn't even shave or shower in the halfway house. If I had left at 6, I had 2 hours to get to work. And I would use that 2 hours to do the following. I would drive somewhere and I'd run 4 or 5 miles. Then my mom lives pretty in Calabasas. And I would run, I would shave and shower at my mom's, and I'd get to the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. You call as soon as you get there. Hello, I'm at work. They call back immediately to confirm that you're there. Because my job was approved, I had 12 hours to work, 9, 10 hours to work, something like that. My boss could call and say, we need Justin to continue to work here. And they would give me, I can get a few more hours added on. So essentially I'd be there at 8 and I'd have, let's just say, till 6 o'clock, right? Think about that. That's when it's party time. That's when you want to go to the halfway house. When your job is approved, you're doing a job that is kind of allows you some time to pursue your own goals. You're getting paid. It's great. That's when I'm like, I cannot believe day 1. I wish I was back in prison. Now day 7, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm so grateful I went to the halfway house. So leave work at 6. Then again, you have 2 hours to get back. And maybe then I'd have a date. I'd see a friend. I would do something like that. Maybe I would exercise. Then you go back to the halfway house at 8 o'clock. You check in. You do a breathalyzer. There will be random drug tests throughout your time in the halfway house. I had maybe 1 that first week, even though I didn't have a drug case and I don't have a history of using drugs. They're randomly going to test you. Then at 8 o'clock, I did not hit the compound. I wasn't fascinated with the porn star or TMZ and what people were doing. I was a loner who didn't talk to anyone, similar to prison, and I knew I had to avoid problems at all costs. So I went immediately back to my room, and I would do the same thing I did every day while I was in federal prison. I would do some writing, some of which is in my journal behind me. My iPhone was approved, which was wonderful. So I would begin to call and text and line up hopefully some events, recreate or try to reestablish some relationships. I'd created a campaign to share my book with hundreds of people. That later turned out to be a little bit of a problem because I funded that on a credit card that I did not get permission to spend for my probation officer, Isaiah Murrow. I had to overcome that. If you're going to take out new credit or really extend credit or take on big expenses as I did, you have to get approval for those things. But he understood my intentions were good. He didn't punish me, but it could have been problematic. So I would use that time to kind of market and build from my iPhone, and then I was exhausted, similar to prison, right? Get up at 4:30, work, exercise for an hour and a half, work all day, get back to the halfway house and sleep, do the same thing the next day. at 6 a.m. And that's from that 7th day till I went to home confinement about 6 weeks later. It was the same thing every single day. And by working and avoiding problems, eventually, even in the halfway house, I'd get a day pass, and then a 24-hour pass, and then a 48-hour pass, then home confinement. In upcoming videos, I'll talk more about my experience in the halfway house, but I'll close sort of with how I open. This experience will eventually end, I promise you. And what I don't want is for you to reach the end with a whole new set of regrets, like so many people have. They regret how they mitigated, how they prepared. They look back and they're like, I would do things differently. Then they have a chance to do things differently and they don't. But I can assure you, this federal prison sentence is ending. And with RDAP and earned time credits and all these good things, prison terms is not as long as they used to be, which means you need to ignore the unsolicited opinions from people who tell you no one will read it or nobody cares. Because there's a truth, as you know, some will read it and won't care. Part of the journey. Some will read it and absolutely care. You've got to do your own thing. You've got to avoid the unsolicited advice, the haters, the people who love misery, who want to get you down. And you've got to derive satisfaction in doing work on days where nobody cares, or you think nobody will ever care. And that's what I learned from Michael Santos, because he did it every day for 26 years in federal prison. I'm like, this dude can do it for 26 years. I can probably do it for a year. But I'm telling all of you, and if Isaiah Murillo, you're watching, if some of you don't believe me, call him, find him, track him down. Because of the work that I did, he rewarded me with more liberty in the halfway house, and he approved my job in building this business, and I am so grateful to him, and I'm grateful I chose to follow through and do the work in federal prison. The first 7 days in the halfway house, it's coming for you. Be ready. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm also supposed to tell you to like and subscribe at the end of this video. I didn't. If you find value, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'm so thankful to have you in my community, in our community. Goodbye.